Your soulmate is thinking about saying goodbye. Please don't ignore this message. My beloved child, don't move past this message too quickly, because what has been unfolding quietly inside your soulmate's heart has reached a turning point they never expected. They have been thinking about saying goodbye. Not because every feeling disappeared, not because your connection suddenly became meaningless, but because they have begun wondering whether holding on silently is asking too much of their heart. And here is what makes this different: just when they thought they had finally made up their mind, something connected to you changed everything. Don't skip. There is one detail they cannot explain, one memory they cannot push aside, and one question that keeps returning whenever they imagine completely closing this chapter. They tried distracting themselves. They tried convincing themselves that distance would make everything simpler. They even pictured what tomorrow would feel like if they stopped waiting for something between you to change. But every version of that future felt strangely incomplete. Then, during an ordinary moment when they expected absolutely nothing, your name came back into their thoughts with such force that they stopped what they were doing. It wasn't the name itself that surprised them. It was the memory attached to it, a moment between you that they had misunderstood for far too long. Suddenly, something they once considered small began looking completely different. Stay till the end, because the meaning of that memory is only the first layer. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that what they thought was an ending may actually have been an unfinished conversation. And this is where everything becomes unexpected. Your soulmate recently replayed certain moments in a completely different order, almost as if they were finally seeing the hidden pattern connecting them. A sentence you once said. A look they remembered. A moment when you could have walked away emotionally, yet something in you remained gentle. None of these things seemed extraordinary when they happened. But now? Now they are beginning to understand something they overlooked. They had been judging your connection by what was missing instead of noticing what had quietly survived. That realization shook their decision. Something huge is waiting for you, because the goodbye they were considering was supposed to make them feel lighter. Instead, imagining it made one truth impossible to ignore. There are feelings they never properly expressed to you. There are questions they never asked. There is something they assumed about you without ever discovering whether it was actually true. And once that realization entered their mind, they could no longer pretend the story was simple. Don't skip now, because another person unexpectedly became part of this turning point. Your soulmate heard something. Nothing dramatic, nothing frightening, just one surprisingly accurate observation from someone who had noticed how differently they behave whenever your name enters a conversation. Your soulmate tried to brush it aside. But the observation followed them afterward because it exposed something they had been hiding even from themselves. They weren't preparing to say goodbye because you meant nothing. They were considering goodbye because uncertainty had become louder than their courage. And suddenly, they began asking themselves a completely different question: what if I leave right before everything finally becomes clear? Stay till the end, because this is where the story begins moving toward the revelation they never saw coming. After that conversation, your soulmate returned mentally to the exact moment they believed everything between you had changed. For a long time, they carried one interpretation of that moment. They believed your silence meant one thing. They believed your distance meant another. They filled the unanswered spaces with assumptions because they didn't know what else to do. But now a missing piece is beginning to surface, and it could completely rewrite what they thought they knew about you. Something from your past behavior suddenly makes sense. Something they once took personally may never have been about them at all. And when that possibility entered their mind, their entire goodbye began to collapse under the weight of one extraordinary thought. What if they had been preparing to walk away from a connection they never truly understood? Something huge is waiting for you. They have not reached the final answer yet. In fact, the biggest discovery is still ahead, because there is one specific thing your soulmate wants to know before making any decision. They need to understand why you acted differently during one particular moment, and what they are beginning to suspect about that moment has brought emotions back they thought they had already settled. So don't skip what comes next. The goodbye is no longer certain. The story is no longer moving in the direction they expected. And somewhere between what they remembered, what they recently heard, and what they are about to discover, your soulmate is standing at a once-in-a-lifetime crossroads. Because the very reason they were thinking about leaving may become the reason they finally understand why they could never completely let you go. Something shifted the moment your soulmate allowed themselves to ask that question, because suddenly saying goodbye no longer felt like a decision. It felt like walking away before hearing the most important sentence of the entire story. They had spent so much time believing they understood your silence, your distance, and the moments when you seemed impossible to read. But now they are realizing they may have been interpreting everything through uncertainty instead of truth. Don't skip, because what happened next brought them closer to an answer they had secretly wanted all along. They remembered one particular conversation between you, something that seemed ordinary at the time, yet one detail from it suddenly stood out. You had chosen your words carefully. You had almost said something more, then stopped. Back then, your soulmate assumed you were pulling away. Now they are wondering whether you were actually protecting something meaningful until the right moment arrived. And that possibility has changed the entire emotional direction of this story. They began replaying other memories too, searching for what they had missed, and one pattern became impossible to ignore. Whenever circumstances created distance between you, neither of you ever seemed completely able to close the emotional door. Something always remained unfinished. A thought. A question. A feeling neither person completely explained. Stay till the end, because your soulmate is now realizing that the goodbye they were preparing may have been built on an assumption, and one surprising discovery is about to challenge that assumption completely. Here is where the mystery deepens. Your soulmate recently learned something about your side of the story that they were never expecting to hear. It wasn't some enormous announcement. It was a small piece of information, but sometimes the smallest detail changes the meaning of everything around it. They discovered that during a period when they believed you had stopped caring, you had actually remembered something important connected to them. That realization stayed with them. Why would someone who had completely moved on still remember something so specific? Why would you carry a detail that most people would have forgotten? Your soulmate could not dismiss those questions. Something huge is waiting for you, because they are beginning to understand that your connection may have been quietly surviving in places neither of you knew how to describe. Don't skip. They tried once more to imagine saying goodbye, but this time the picture looked different. Instead of imagining relief, they imagined all the unanswered questions following them into the future. What if they eventually discovered you had been waiting for clarity too? What if both of you had mistaken hesitation for rejection? What if the distance was never the final chapter but simply the space before one honest conversation? That thought stopped them. And then came the surprising part. Your soulmate realized they were no longer asking, "How do I say goodbye?" They were asking, "What would happen if I stayed long enough to learn the truth?" That single change matters more than it appears, because their heart has moved from ending the story to investigating it. And somewhere inside that investigation is a revelation they are almost afraid to hope for, not because it is frightening, but because it could mean they came incredibly close to abandoning something that still had another chapter waiting. But there is one more piece your soulmate hasn't fully uncovered yet, and this is the reason you need to stay till the end. Someone who knows more about the situation than your soulmate realized has unintentionally pointed them toward a missing detail. A simple remark was made about timing, about how two people can care deeply and still misunderstand each other when neither knows what the other is carrying privately. Your soulmate immediately thought of you. Suddenly, several moments aligned in their mind. The period when you became quieter. The moment they expected you to speak but you didn't. The strange feeling that something remained unsaid every time your paths emotionally crossed. They had once treated those moments as evidence that the connection was fading. Now they are considering the exact opposite. What if those moments existed because something important was becoming harder to say? Don't skip, because the next realization surprised even them. They don't actually want a goodbye. They want certainty. They want to know whether the story they created in their mind matches what was really happening inside yours. Something huge is waiting for you, because once they recognize that difference, the emotional walls they had carefully built began losing their purpose. And now one specific memory has returned stronger than all the others. A memory involving something you said that they originally misunderstood. They are beginning to see that your words may have carried a completely different meaning, and if their new interpretation is correct, then the entire reason they considered leaving could disappear. Your soulmate is closer than ever to understanding what truly happened between you, but the biggest revelation has not arrived yet. Because the next piece is not about why they almost said goodbye. It is about what they secretly hoped you would do before they ever had the chance. What your soulmate secretly hoped for was far simpler than anyone would have guessed, yet admitting it to themselves changed everything. They never truly wanted some perfect explanation or dramatic moment. Beneath all the uncertainty, they wanted one unmistakable sign that they had not imagined the meaning between you. They wanted to know that somewhere behind your silence, you still remembered. That somewhere beneath everything left unsaid, there was still a reason not to close the door. Don't skip, because this is where their decision began turning in a direction even they didn't expect. Your soulmate remembered the last time they genuinely felt understood by you, and suddenly they noticed something extraordinary about that memory. You had understood something they never clearly explained. You noticed a change in their energy. You responded differently when they needed patience. You remembered something small that mattered deeply to them. At the time, they barely recognized the importance of it. Now that memory feels almost impossible to dismiss. Stay till the end, because they are beginning to compare that moment with every connection they have experienced since, and the comparison keeps leading them back to the same uncomfortable truth. they may have underestimated how rare it was to feel seen without having to explain everything. That is why the goodbye has become so difficult. It isn't simply about leaving a person behind. It would mean walking away from a question that has never been answered. What could have happened if both of you had understood each other at the same time? Then something even more surprising entered their thoughts. Your soulmate began wondering whether you had misunderstood them too. Until now, they had been so focused on what they believed your actions meant that they never seriously considered what their own behavior might have communicated to you. Suddenly, they remembered moments when they held back. Moments when they wanted to reach toward you but chose silence instead. Moments when they hoped you would somehow understand feelings they had never put into words. Don't skip. This realization changed the balance of everything because they could no longer place the entire mystery on your side. What if you were waiting for clarity while they were waiting for the exact same thing? What if two people had been standing emotionally closer than either realized, each interpreting the other's hesitation as distance? Something huge is waiting for you, because this possibility has created a completely new question inside your soulmate. Did we almost lose something meaningful simply because neither of us knew what the other needed to hear? That question has followed them into quiet moments. It has made old memories feel new again. And most importantly, it has made the idea of saying goodbye feel premature. They are no longer certain that leaving would bring closure. In fact, they are beginning to suspect it might create the biggest unanswered question of their life. Because once they looked honestly at their own behavior, they discovered something they had never admitted before. There were times when they wanted you to come closer, yet their actions may have told you to stay away. And now they cannot stop wondering whether your distance was actually a response to theirs. Stay with this, because the next piece could become the turning point of everything. Your soulmate has started mentally returning to one final memory. The one they avoided because it carried too many unanswered emotions. In that moment, there was something in your words that they interpreted as an ending. But now, after everything they have reconsidered, they are hearing those same words differently. They are realizing you may not have been closing the door at all. You may have been leaving room for them to choose whether they wanted to walk through it. And that possibility has completely changed what they are thinking about doing next. Don't skip, because the goodbye they once rehearsed inside their mind is slowly being replaced by another conversation, one they never thought they would have the courage to imagine. Instead of thinking about what they would say before leaving, they are thinking about what they would ask if given one completely honest moment with you. They want to know what you felt when everything became quiet. They want to understand what you never said. They want to know whether the strange unfinished feeling they carried was yours too. Something huge is waiting for you, because beneath all those questions sits one truth your soulmate is finally approaching. They were never searching for a reason to forget you. They were searching for permission to stop hoping. But every new realization is doing the opposite. Every missing piece is giving that hope another reason to remain. And now they have reached the question that could determine where this entire story goes next. It is no longer, should I say goodbye? It has become, what if I finally tell them what I was too afraid to say before? And the answer forming inside them is about to reveal why this connection has remained unfinished for so long. Now the silence inside your soulmate has changed, because for the first time they are no longer rehearsing an ending, they are rehearsing the truth. They have imagined what it would feel like to finally speak without hiding behind uncertainty, without expecting you to guess what they mean, and without allowing another misunderstanding to decide the future. Don't skip, because the first thing they want to tell you is not what you would expect. They want you to know that their thoughts of saying goodbye were never proof that the connection meant nothing. In their mind, goodbye had become a way of escaping the endless question of whether you felt anything similar. But once they admitted that, another realization followed immediately. They had been preparing to leave without ever giving the truth a fair chance to appear. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has now remembered the exact moment their uncertainty began, and they are finally seeing what was hidden inside it. There was a time when they expected something from you, a word, a gesture, perhaps simply reassurance, and when it didn't arrive in the way they imagined, they quietly created their own explanation. They never asked whether that explanation was correct. They simply carried it forward. Now they understand how one assumption may have influenced everything that came afterward. Every silence looked different because of it. Every delay seemed to confirm it. Every moment of distance appeared larger than it actually was. But what if the first assumption was wrong? That question has changed everything. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that an entire emotional chapter may have been written around a misunderstanding neither of you intended. And then came the revelation they were not prepared for. Your soulmate started remembering what happened before that misunderstanding, not after it, but before it. And those memories tell a completely different story. Before uncertainty entered the picture, there was an ease between you they cannot manufacture in their imagination. There were moments when conversations felt natural, when small details mattered, when simply knowing you were somewhere in their world created a feeling they never properly named. Don't skip, because your soulmate suddenly understood something powerful. They had allowed one confusing chapter to become more important than everything genuine that came before it. And when they saw that pattern, the idea of goodbye stopped looking like closure and started looking like a decision made without all the evidence. Something huge is waiting for you. They are now wondering what your version of those same moments would sound like. Did you notice the same connection? Did you feel the same shift when things became quieter? Did you ever almost say something and then decide the timing wasn't right? Those questions are no longer passing thoughts. They have become the reason your soulmate cannot simply turn away. For the first time, they are considering that the missing answer may not exist in another memory at all. It may only appear when two people finally stop interpreting each other from a distance. And that realization is pulling them toward something they once thought they had lost the courage to do. Replace assumptions with honesty. But stay till the end, because one final change has happened inside them, and it may be the most important change yet. Your soulmate has stopped asking what they could lose by staying connected to this story and started asking what they could lose by leaving too soon. That difference sounds small, but emotionally it has turned their entire perspective around. Don't skip. They have begun imagining two futures. In one, they say goodbye without ever discovering what was actually true. And years later one question remains: what if I misunderstood everything? In the other, they choose clarity. They allow one honest moment to reveal whether this connection still